Hi there, Real Robin here. Today I'm going to be reviewing the game Shadow Warrior 2, which came out about a month or so ago. It was released by the same studio as the first game, Flying Wild Hog, and let me just say that I absolutely loved the first game. They really knocked it out of the park with that one. It had great combat, great level design, really great bosses. It also had a really interesting story and characters. It did have a bit of a schoolyard sense of humor, but it holds up because the main character Wang says more than just one-liners. He actually has quite a lot to say besides that, and so do the other characters. It's really, really surprisingly well written. It also has just absolutely fantastic uh, differences from the usual first-person shooter system in that it also uses a lot of sword fighting and magic. It basically does everything that Duke Nukem Forever couldn't do, and that makes it a much, much better remake. It's a lot funnier, it's a lot more fun, it's a lot better written, and overall it's just a fantastic game. Now, the second game is still fun, but they wanted to take it in a different direction than the first game, and it suffers because of that. They seem to want it to be a little bit more like Borderlands than a straight-up shooter, with a bigger focus on multiplayer, which the first game didn't have, but that ends up hurting the single player. I didn't get a chance to play the multiplayer section of the game because I don't know anyone else who owns it. I only played the single player campaign, and it definitely felt like it was built more for multiplayer. There's only a small handful of environments that you get to see. So what they've done is they've got this randomly generated side mission area thing where every time you start a side mission, it uses a lot of the same elements from other side missions. It'll just randomly place where they are, like buildings and terrain and other things like that. The problem with this is that large elements get reused and that makes levels feel really familiar. Instead of buildings being randomly generated, they just plonk entire buildings which have already been generated into the levels, and you'll end up going through the same buildings quite a lot, especially in some of the the Zilla Corporation levels. Even the same storyline missions use many areas, so it ends up feeling like you're really not seeing that much compared to the first game, which had a lot more varied areas. The same boss fight is even repeated 3 times in this game. It's a little bit ridiculous, and it just felt like I was playing the same sections over and over again. Another problem with the game is that they've tried to boost the amount of weapons that you use. Like Borderlands, the stats for weapons are randomly generated, but the weapons are pre-designed. There's basically too many weapons, and it feels like the upgrade system is really poorly explained and far too detailed. There wasn't really anything in the game that told me how to read them and how to use them, and it ended up taking me much longer than it should have to work out which upgrades to put in. It also makes you spend too much time switching weapons and upgrades, just like that was one of my biggest problems with Borderlands, where you just feel like you're spending more time doing that than actually playing the game. It's not all bad though, there's some really good stuff about the game. Kamiko, the new sidekick in the game, is really neat, and her banter with Wang is really fun. The other character interaction is really interesting, and you feel a real history between the characters. I wish it were a little bit more fleshed out though. The game felt like it was over a bit too quickly, and you don't get to spend much time with any one character before they're either killed off or just leave the story for one reason or another. You feel like you're in combat a lot more, which is fun, but there's just not quite enough time spent with the other characters. Now, combat still feels great, but the sheer number of weapons tends to clutter it. You're not swapping weapons so much because you're running out of ammo for any one weapon, but you will find that there are tons and tons of different types of ammo to pick up to accommodate for all the weapons, and you'll find yourself switching through the weapons quite a lot to find one that you like. And by the time I found a weapon that I actually liked, the game was already over. It's not really long enough to accommodate the sheer amount of weapons and upgrades that they've put into this game. I'm really glad they wanted to try something new rather than rehashing the first game, but it went too far in a different direction and focused more on weapons than environments or character interaction. It needed to be a little bit more like Painkiller than Borderlands, I think. If you haven't played Painkiller before, it's a really great throwback first-person shooter. Overall, it's a really good game. I did like it. It was still really, really fun. The combat from the first game is still there in essence, and the gameplay is really, really fun because of that, but it needed to cut back and refine instead of overwhelming you with choice. And that about wraps this review up. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you have any comments or suggestions for future episodes, please leave them in the comments below. Have a good one!